Hello, it's me again. I wish to do a second part of the video about what kind of happened after the first video that I posted earlier, just to document since then what has changed, and as well as a couple of questions that I think are worth being raised, so that if American Airlines ever sees this video and they wish to address and rectify this issue, as well as just to give the answers that I believe passengers deserve, they might want to do so. So same outfit as before. Sadly, we'll get onto that in a minute about why that's the case. But luckily, where I'm now, I finally managed to get into one of the hotels that they've assigned us somewhere about a couple of miles away from Dallas Airport. Managed to get a couple of hours sleep after not being able to sleep for more than 24 hours, unfortunately. But now, after a couple of hours sleep, I'm feeling a little bit better. So the first thing that I was trying to think is, what mechanical issues were there on the plane? So I know they have been using that as a reason. However, there's no more details than that have been given to the passengers. Now, I'm not saying I understand a lot about the airplane. I don't. I travel quite a bit, but I'm not very technical about things. But I'm sure there might be other passengers who can understand a bit more, and people would appreciate a bit more details than just to say there's a mechanical issues about the plane, right? And why would the mechanical issue only be like apparent after sort of less than an hour after takeoff? Because the flight presumably came from somewhere before it's being used for AA80. Why wasn't it an issue at the last flight? What pre-flight checklist that they have gone through to decide that it was deemed fit for fly, but only 1 hour in they decided against it. That is a question I want AA to answer. Then the second thing I think nobody was happy about on board was, why weren't passengers disembarked as soon as the plane had landed? It landed around midnight, and we saw fire trucks and the police cars outside the vehicle. As soon as it became safe to disembark, it feels that's the most appropriate thing for passengers to do, is to go back to the airport terminal so that they can use the bathroom, they can stretch out legs, they can just kind of make themselves more comfortable, rather than stay being cramped on the plane for another, I believe, like 4 hours or so. I took a picture when I was about to finally be able to disembark. That was about 4 a.m. in the morning. Now, question number 3 I have here is, we couldn't move the plane. Well, so we couldn't disembark earlier because we were told that another big plane that was kind of on the docking station that was needed to be able to accommodate a 777. However, they had 4 hours. So if at some point they came to the realization that they needed to kind of dock the 777 so that people can disembark, why did they not move the other airplane out of the way earlier? We had to literally wait on the plane, as they used that as one of the reasons that we couldn't disembark sooner. Then my fourth question here is just kind of relaying about what happened, as well as the timestamps about a couple of the communication I've received. They sent, again, not to actually everyone. I received the email, but I realized later that not every passengers have received it for some reason. Some people have received only the rerouting email, but not the complimentary hotel plus meals email. I received the complimentary hotel plus meals email at around 1:52 a.m. in the morning. So if that's when they decided to book, that means they kind of already knew, the plane wasn't gonna fly sort of that night, right? Otherwise, there's no point kind of booking people hotels if the passengers weren't gonna stay in these hotels. But what's also very funny is all the hotels that were booked, all the options presented to us, were all in Dallas, not in Tulsa. So does that mean that they actually of never want people to stay in a hotel in Tulsa. They kind of were already, projected that the whole thing would take longer so that people wouldn't have time to stay in Tulsa, because that was still a time where, I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate some time in a hotel in Tulsa. Then, then on the meal side, $12 for each person is pretty weak. Let's say, if you've been to Dallas airport, I tried to get a salad in the airport earlier. That cost me like $15,000 before tax. We're not talking about like, splashing out on some fancy dining. Just a simple salad would not be, inside the $12. So I had to pay the difference myself, which again is not very appreciated given the circumstances. Like, I think if you really want to have a meal inside the $12, maybe McDonald's was the only option. That's, again, just not very helpful. Then whilst we were in Tulsa, after everyone finally managed to disembark, it was like kind of 4:30. I think maybe the last passenger got off the plane around like 5 a.m. There were queues, kind of two big queues going to gate A7 and A10 in Tulsa airport. However, there were still all the other gates around us, as well as the two gates between A7 and A10, which is A8 and A9, were being used for other flights, which really kind of create a messy situation there, because for some reason there were passengers trying to get to other flights. They can't tell which line is which. They were just suddenly flooded with people in the airport, and they were constantly kind of shifting the head of the queue, not the tail of the queue, but they were shifting the head of the queue to different desks. They were alternating between different counters, which created even more confusion for passengers about, where they were sort of queuing for, right? And again, they knew who were on that AA80 flights. People didn't have to stand to queue, but that was the option that was given to the passengers. Why couldn't you just put all the people into a room of some sorts, or at least give them tickets, right, about their seating plan, and let them sit down whilst waiting, right? And throughout the entire evening, there's just very little staff cover, if I may say so, just completely inadequate to deal with the number of passengers, as well as the number of reroutings and the customer queries that were raised. Given it's a massive incident, with more than 300 passengers, you should try to increase your staff cover. And what's again also very funny is, I raised this point when I was there. They're like, oh, because it's Tulsa, it's a small airport, we're trying to fly every one of you back to Dallas, which we'll get onto that in a minute. They were like, you have better, help there. And they flew all of us back, right? I don't know about all of us, but a lot of us back this morning in the end. I get to Dallas airport, there were like, again, 100 people plus queuing for their customer service counter there, mixed up between AA80 passengers as well as general passengers. So I went to another counter with some other American Airlines stuff. Some other gentleman gave me really great help. But again, you really didn't want people to queue again after they've queued for 4 hours, right? Like, I was in the queue with this kind of senior citizen, he's traveling by himself, maybe like somewhere in his 60s. I guess I'm lucky, like I'm in my 30s, that I will still be able to handle all these, given I'm slightly younger. And he kind of almost fainted a couple of times. He had to sit down a couple of times, and he was asking me to hold his spot in the queue. Like, why couldn't American Airlines give him, some assistance, right? Prioritize people, with greater needs, right? Like, it was literally just a queue by the order of people who disembarked plane and queued up, right? Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the bags, which again is very confusing throughout the whole evening. So before we disembarked, there was an announcement made on the plane to say that the bags would be returned to all the passengers in Tulsa, because originally they said, they would put us in hotels in Tulsa. But then looking back, you realize they never actually wanted to put anyone in any hotels in Tulsa because all the hotel options presented were in dollars. Again, that's another important thing, right? But we never really get to see our bags, you know. It's kind of just annoying and not helpful because, you know, after getting delayed for so long, you want to get some stuff from your bag, such as like, you know, clean clothing, you know, a new pair of socks, for example, right? Like I'm in my same outfit for more than 30 hours by this stage because I don't have access to my bags, which, you know, is not appreciated, let's say, right? So they firstly said all the bags will be returned to you in Tulsa. Then sort of somewhere in the morning, let's say 5, 6 a.m., after everyone disembarked, they made an announcement, oh, actually all the bags would go with you on your rerouted route. Again, I was okay with that. However, that did not happen until like about 8 or 9 in the morning, or 8 something in the morning. They were like, actually all your bags would go back to Dallas with the flight that would take everyone back to Dallas. And if you decided to go a reroute that does not involve Dallas, because initially they presented me with an option that fly from Tulsa to Austin, then back to London this evening. They told me your bag would not go with you. I don't know how that would work logistically and how secure that is, you know, whether that presents a safety risk or not, because my impression is that the bags would need to stay with the passengers on the same plane. But anyway, I didn't really want to, you know, get to London without my bags. So they were like, oh, if you want to stay with your bags all the time, you would have to fly back to Dallas on this plane first. Then they will fly you to, you know, London, or, you know, people going further than London, kind of via that route, which I took that route, right? Again, the messaging on bags were really mixed. And even this morning, after we got to Dallas, there were announcements being made on board because the captain or the crews were already fully aware there were lots of, you know, passengers from the AA80 flights that were on that plane. They were saying something else, what the people in Tulsa were telling us. It's like, oh, you need to go to the carousel and pick up your bags. So I then had to check again once I touched ground in Dallas, like, do I actually need to go? Because I don't want my bags to just be left, you know, behind in Dallas. If I need to pick them up and then recheck, I can do that. But you need to tell me if I need to actually go and pick them up. Nobody knows for certain until I triple checked with another gentleman at one of the counter. He was like, yeah, you don't need to pick them up, they will go straight to London. And I hope that they do, because I don't really know for sure that would actually happen at this stage just yet. So anyway, that's, I think, everything I have about, you know, what has happened since I posted the last video. I'm about 3 hours away from my, you know, the same flight, AA80, this evening, going back to London. I hope it goes smoothly without any incidents. And, you know, I might probably see some of the people that I saw from last night. And American Airlines, like, I've been flying with, you know, OneWorld for many years, let's say, right? Like, I've been on a British Airways Silver members for quite some time. And this is by far the worst experience, right? Like, I understand there are factors outside your control. You know, there are mechanical errors, there are things that are unprepared or unforeseeable. However, what I feel in general is, given the situations we found ourselves in, there were so many things that could have been handled better, including the ways that you deal with your passengers, you know, the number of staff that's available for assistance, the number of food and water that's being provided to the passengers, as well as some consistent and the clear and the concise communication. All that could have been much, much better, you know, in terms of how you have standard procedures in terms of handling these videos. Handling these incidents. That's all. Thank you for watching, and I hope your journey goes smoother than the one that I'm having right now. Thank you.